to Revenue Rockstars. We're so glad you're pausing from your day to join us for this session. I'm Tara Benyuski, Marketing Director with SharpSpring, a fellow marketer like many of you today. For those of you who've attended previous sessions in the series, it is great to welcome you back. And before I introduce Ann, who's alongside me today, let me give a little bit of context for why we are running this Rockstar series. For all of us, the way that customers and our business partners engage with us and how they buy has changed. Well, of course, that's a given, as customers will always continue to change, but how we shift and interact with them in a way that resonates with each of them as individuals with individual needs and interests and real challenges in their everyday is so important to remaining relevant. So, understanding that need for change and actually performing it, however, are two very different tasks. So the series really focuses on having, real conversations to expose the challenges and the opportunities where if we do shift, those are to be gained. And really just looking at some of the brightest and the best in the industry, how they are seeing results. And really, what ties us all together is that whether you're classified as B2B, an agency, B2C, even B2B2C, at the crux is the need to engage in really meaningful, personalized, and authentic ways. These are the conversations that we're having often at SharpSpring and with partners like Ann. Just a couple housekeeping tips. Our lines are muted. Please post any questions you may have in the Q&A panel. We'll certainly try to get to them as we have time, or we'll follow up afterward. And yes, we are recording today's session, so it will be available after the event and to share with others at your business. Finally, let's take a quick peek at our lineup of A-listers that are slotted for upcoming sessions. You will definitely want to join us on November 3rd when Seth Godin shares his thoughts on modern marketing. So we're pretty excited about this lineup of Revenue Rockstars. And speaking of Rockstars, this is an ideal lead into Ann. Most, if not all of us, know Ann as a Chief Content Officer at MarketingProfs, Wall Street best-selling author, keynote speaker, and an overall icon in the industry. Ann, before we jump too far ahead, welcome. You've had a full schedule this year. We'd love to just have you catch us up to speed on what you've been up to.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Tara. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. I just learned how to smile just without engaging with anything other than, listening to you speak. So it's like very awkward for me personally, but I'm delighted to be here. And fun fact, actually, so Seth Godin is going to join you on November 3rd, also my birthday. So perfect gift for me. And also I see so many friends here, so it's really great to be here connecting with you. And I didn't even answer your question, which is, what am I up to? All right, what am I up to? Let's see, this year. Lots and lots of virtual programs like this, but this fall, finally starting to see some live events come back, which is incredibly exciting. So I have been to a few this fall already, which is, fantastic. I am also working on, this is a brand new announcement I'm about to make for the very first time, at least on social media. I am working on a second edition of Everybody Writes, my Wall Street Journal best-selling book. Very excited about that, and very excited to sort of to reboot it a little bit. Question might be, why am I redoing or reissuing a book that is still selling pretty well, and that I'm still, very that is, still looked at as, sort of a I don't want to use the wrong word here. It's still selling pretty well. Let's just leave it at that. And the reason is because there's a few things in it that I've evolved my thinking on. And we're going to talk about some of those things today, including newsletters, for example. There's some things that I want to build out. There's some ways that I reapproach my writing, and my voice has changed too. My writing voice has changed because I wrote that book 6 years ago. And so when I read it now, I can see ways that I would maybe say things a little differently now. So I really just wanted the opportunity to correct some of those things and to augment some of those things. So that's what I'm working on. And MarketingProfs just launched a brand new consulting division. So we are now offering consulting services on a host of things, from branding to demand gen to positioning, among a few other things. And yeah, so there's lots going on. It's been a very exciting time.
Excellent. Congratulations. And my chat panel is lighting up, and you've got a lot of fans with us joining us today. So congrats. I'm sure you will have quite an audience for it.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's so great to see everybody. This is as good as we get a lot of times, right, in terms of actually being together. So it's what we do.
It's very exciting. So, Ann, this is a bit of a unique session from others in our series. It's really focused on content, specifically. From Ann's perspective, how do you see writing and content fitting into this overall mix of revenue-minded webinars?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the focus on revenue is really important here, because I think if there's one thing that we've seen over the past 18 months or so, is the importance of content, not just top of funnel, right? Not just as a way to attract customers or prospects to us, but also a way to nurture them, to convert them, to think about building relationships post sale as well. So I think, what we're seeing really is content growing up. It's no longer just top of funnel. It's no longer siloed. It's really increasingly being integrated throughout the sales and marketing function, which to me is just it's kind of about time. But I think it's a really watershed moment for marketing and sales. And it may seem like, oh well, this has been a slow evolution, but I think we've really seen it accelerate over the past 18 months, when we've all been interacting through digital channels like this.
Yeah, and I think we all see all this, so many stats showing, how many touch points customers now need to make a buying decision, and that they have all kinds of tools and assets out there for them to self-educate and qualify that, that pathway or that runway to, making a purchase decision looks so much longer today, right? And so now marketing has really had to fill in those gaps and make sure that they've got content for, the entire buying cycle.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is really interesting. So MarketingProfs every year does a content marketing survey with the Content Marketing Institute. Every year we partner on it, and this is our 12th year of producing this joint content marketing study. And the most recent study just came out 6 or 7 days ago, something like that. And some of the findings in it were really interesting, and they really underscore what you're talking about, Tara, which is that, content is definitely, throughout everything that we do now. It's really seeded and woven into almost everything that we do. And one of the most interesting stats that I saw, and if we can pull up the graphic there we go. One of the interesting questions that we asked B2B marketers was, what do you expect will happen with your budgets, right? Because money talks, you follow the money and if there's money going towards something, then that means there's some momentum behind it too, right? And so we asked B2B marketers, how will your budget change in 2022? So looking forward, compared with this year, right? Compared with 2021. And this slide, or these results, just astounded me, because look at this. It's like, taken together, 20% of B2B marketers think that they will increase their budget more than 9%. And 46% of B2B marketers of us think that we'll increase it between 1 and 9%. So taken together, 66% of us are looking to put more money into the content that we're producing. And I think that's a really interesting stat, right? Because it really speaks to the importance of content, throughout the entire marketing and sales function in a very tangible way. And there's a few, just anecdotally too, I just wanted to share a few quotes. So we asked, sort of what is going on in like a more general state of content marketing within your own organization as relates to the pandemic, as relates to the past 18 months. And these are some direct quotes from people who took the survey. So first up, switch to the next slide. Hopefully. There we go. we said, "Yo, marketing." This is exactly how we speak to marketers because we're buttoned up and professional like this. We say, "Yo, marketing, what's your content look like post-COVID?" And one person said, "Who would have thought that a pandemic would be the thing to finally bring content marketing out from behind the shadows and into the forefront of marketing communication?" And really, we're seeing that, right? We're seeing it not just evolve from the shadows, right, but really take a center stage role in both marketing and sales as the primary tool that we use to communicate with people who matter to our business. And then the second quote here from another person: "The pandemic reinforced the importance of our content marketing strategy. There had been a commitment to it, but now that commitment is company wide and there's more collaboration between marketing and sales." And like, high five, right? Like, that's fantastic right there. Like, that's the moment we've been waiting for. So when I say it's a watershed moment, I really do believe this. And I think that the data and the anecdotes bear that out.
Right. And I think too, no two buyers are the same, right? They have slightly different needs. They may have different profiles, different challenges that they might be facing. So having one linear path really just doesn't really flesh out with how real people buy today. And so whether you call it linear, whether you call it a looped buying cycle, like, you have to have the content ready for them in the moment, that it really fits their needs. And so having the educational content to the convincing content to, helping people actually make the decision and have what they need is so critical for
Yeah.
a smooth experience.
Yeah, exactly. And that word experience, right? What does it look like throughout, the sales cycle? Again, pre-sale and post-sale, like throughout the entire customer lifestyle, throughout the entire relationship. Two more quick stats that I want to share with you, and everybody here. I was going to say I didn't have time to put a slide together, but it's more that, I don't know, I just kind of wanted to use my own font, with this one. So this is the first slide I wanted to share with you. This is up. I don't want to cover up the data there. So the question we asked was, what you're looking at here is the most successful content marketers, B2B content marketers, craft content based on specific stages of the buyer journey, right? So 62% right here, it's my pointer, my laser pointer, right there, are doing that, right? But just 17% of the least successful are doing that. So, what does that mean? It means that, those of us who are actually thinking about content, like you said, Tara, throughout the sales and marketing function, right, are more successfully using that content, right? So the most successful content marketers are thinking about not just top of funnel, but throughout the entire ecosystem. So wanted to share this one with you. And one more, while we're on the topic of content and research, I always love, every single year, as I said, we've been doing this for 12 years, and I always love to hear what are the kinds of assets that you are finding most success with. And of course, that's changed over time as video and as live streaming and as some of the social platforms have really evolved. And so I'm always interested in this because it feels like it evolves right along with our culture and right along with marketing too. So we asked folks, what are you finding most success with? And what you're seeing here is straight up, like, number one here, virtual events and webinars. It's kind of like an of course, right? Research reports, this one actually kind of surprised me, 48%, so second most popular. Third most popular is blog posts of less than 1,000 words, then case studies, videos, and long articles of more than 3,000 words at 32%. And so, like, when I look at this, it's like, as I said to you, I think it's interesting to see what we're having success with, what we're producing as part of marketing and sales. But what I also think is interesting about this is that this is clearly not all top of funnel, right?
Exactly.
It's throughout all that we're doing. And so yet more tangible evidence that I think that, marketing and content is evolving in how we're perceived within the organization and how we're leveraging it throughout the marketing and sales functions. So
certainly,
yeah, kind of fun.
some of that very expected, but some of those definitely unexpected. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'm available, by the way, for graphics work in case anybody needs some Sharpie help. I'm your gal.
High tech.
I got you.
the questions are coming in. Yes, when are you available? So shifting things slightly, you work with marketers every day. You work with
Mhm.
folks in every kind of business. When you are engaging with them, what are the things you tell writers who might be looking to renew their focus, right? Because we all kind of get in these ruts from time to time, or those who are looking to feel re-energized again. Um, what would you suggest are things to focus on that will drive response rates and revenue at the end of the day? Like we're all, responsible for helping to drive revenue across our organization. Like, what are the tips that you give folks to stay focused?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm like tempted to give writing advice here because I'm always full of writing advice, but I guess I want to pull it back a little bit and just speak at a little bit more of a higher level with maybe a little bit of a broader context. Because when I think about how should we be writing to drive revenue and to engage with our prospects and with our customers, I'm getting distracted by comments coming in. Trying not to. I can't get distracted. So when we think about like how we should be writing, I think the most important thing is to do a sort of level set with yourself, right? It's almost like a mindset shift. And the thing to think about is that when your customers or really when your prospects come to your website, to your social channels, almost anything that you publish or produce, they're thinking about three different things, right? They're thinking about, do I see myself reflected in your words and in your copy and also in your images, which is, kind of outside of the question you asked, but I think is also really important. So do I see myself? And then secondly, do I trust you? Like everything that you're producing, does it seem like you're the best fit for me? Can I trust that you will be there, not just now that you know what you're talking about, but maybe post sale if and when there's a problem, and there's always a problem of some kind or another, right? And so do I see myself? Do I trust you? And the third thing is, do I like you? And I think that affinity piece, are we projecting affinity for our audience? Like, are we saying like, here's who we are and here's what we're all about? And, do I like you? I think that's another important piece. And if you think about those three things, I think when you sit down to craft anything that you publish or produce on behalf of a brand, I think it just really helps you understand like how you should be showing up for the people that matter to you and your business. So that's how I think about it. Again, very high level, but every time I sit down to write, whether it's a blog post or my email newsletter or a social post, it doesn't matter. Like that's what's in my head. Like, am I sort of showing people who I am in a very real and visceral way? And also, do they see themselves in what I'm producing, and can they kind of trust that I am who I say that I am, and that I will be there, like, over time. And the trust isn't something that, of course, you're going to build through one social post or one newsletter or whatever. But I think if you can keep that in your head, that trust is built over time, and we need to be consistently demonstrating that. I think that's the key. And those three things, I think, are the foundation of anything that you're writing.
Do you think that it matters the channel or the medium? Let's say, we have email at hand, we have digital ads, we have white papers, blogs, websites. Does it matter the medium or the channel, or would you say that applies consistently?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it applies consistently, but sometimes when we start talking about tactics, and even when I share something like this, I almost want to add like an asterisk next to it and says, you don't have to do all of this, right? You just need to find the one thing that you can do consistently. Start there and do that super well, and then build on it over time, right? Add a second one if you have the resources and the time, and if your customers are there, and if it's a valuable channel for you. And so, yes, I do think that, it doesn't really matter what channel, but also like you don't have to be everywhere and doing everything. I think really focusing, saying no is just as important in marketing as saying yes. And I think the point where you can really focus in on one thing and do it, super well, you're ultimately, you'll be that much further ahead, as opposed to doing a bunch of stuff in kind of a mediocre way.
Yeah, I
So
think
it's much, yeah.
many of us are guilty for thinking that, having that mindset that more is always better, right? And to your
Yeah.
point, it doesn't necessarily resonate as that. If you're doing something very well, you can always layer upon the approach, but I think the quality, to your point, is far more important.
Yeah, I noticed that Marnie Oakes Raleigh is in the audience today, and first of all, I know Marnie is going to be speaking in a couple of weeks or several weeks, I think, as part of this Revenue
Yes.
Rockstars Series. Is that right? Yeah. So yeah, Marnie is a fantastic example, I think, of some of the concepts that we're talking about here today, of really thinking from a content first and a customer first mindset, in terms of like how you're thinking about it. And I just want to take just a minute or two and sort of tell the story about what Marnie Oakes Raleigh did. And you're going to probably hear this from her as well. And maybe she can correct anything that I got completely wrong. But but so Marnie Oakes Raleigh runs an agency in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. They are a small agency. She told me this morning that they have 13 people working for her, working for them. And they wanted to rebrand, like they wanted to rethink how they were showing up in the market. Things had shifted within their own company. Their business had shifted, and how they were showing up, they wanted to reflect. They wanted to reflect it in a slightly different way. And so they went through this entire half-year rebranding, got super into it, looked at every single asset on the website, redid their customer journey, just rethought everything from the logo to the tone of voice to the kinds of assets they're producing to their content. And there's a few things that I just want to highlight because I think that she and her team did such a fantastic job with it. So if we could just sort of bring up that first, there we go. So what you're looking at here is an email that I got. The date on that is October 15th, so 5 days ago. From Marnie, because I am on her email list, and she's highlighting the fact that yay, like she's announcing we have rebranded. That's a new logo they have up there, and she, in the email newsletter underneath it, she's talking about sort of why they rebranded. But I wanted to call out this email newsletter in particular because email newsletters, like if your email newsletter is not fantastic, like throw out all the other things you're doing and just focus on your email newsletter, because I think it's such an undervalued asset for so many of us. So make your email newsletter really great before you start focusing on anything else, number one. And I think that Marnie did a really, really good job with this. And I want to call out one thing in particular, if we can go to the next slide here. Like, look at that. It comes from Marnie, right? Oh, and Don's here too. Hi, Don. It comes from Marnie. Like, it's Marnie at Evolve Systems. It doesn't come from newsletter at Evolve Systems or Evolve Systems at Evolve Systems. I love the fact that it comes from a person. Her face is right there on my Gmail, and I just love the fact that it feels very human, and automatically, even if you don't read the rest of the newsletter, that automatically sets a very human and accessible tone. So I love that quite a bit.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I recently talked to Marnie myself, and she even rebranded her title to customer champion or client champion. So it is definitely rebranded through and through.
Yeah, and I just want to call out a few other things that they did. And one specific thing that I think is also super smart, Evolve Systems is a very small team. And so they took this rebranding that they did as almost a team building exercise. Super smart. And they also used it as a content exercise because, if you have 13 people on your team and you're all like focused on this rebranding, like what happens to the business, right? What happens to your marketing? And so what they ended up doing was using this rebranding program that they went through, this rebranding idea, and using it as a way to generate more content. So they're sort of showing their work, so to speak. Like when you're in school and your math teacher always wanted you to like show the work when you were like doing your problems. Well, this is exactly what they did from a content and business standpoint. And so, a second ago, I showed you a landing page of a case study that they put together showing, how they went across it, how they went through their rebranding and how they approached it. And then they took all of the lessons that they learned and turned it into a content asset that they could then use to market the business to help the people that they market to, manufacturing companies. It's a free rebranding checklist. Does your business need a rebrand? So it's a fantastic way, I think, of taking what you're doing in your business and and sort of showing your work, right? Showing your work in a way that will help others that you seek to attract. So, so yeah, really well done, Marnie and team. Everybody, I'm saying Marnie, but you know, she's one of many people. They're a fantastic group of people, and they were all part of this.
Certainly are. So, you know, speaking of the business and, you know, it goes beyond just the marketing function, you know, now, and you touched on this earlier, Anne, content
Mm-hmm.
plays such a starring role in so much of what we do across the entire business, right? It's so central to everything. And we don't always even think about it, right? But from
Mm-hmm.
creating that brand awareness and personality to educating the market on both, you know, the indirect and the direct value of a product or the service that we offer, and then all the way ultimately to convincing and converting audience to actually become a paying customer.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we as marketers kind of championing, you know, the role of content? How do we amplify the value of content, not just for our clients, but also internally? Like, how do we evangelize the value?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you know, Don, thank you. It's like I love his hashtag here. Together we are stronger. It's like so awesome. Yes. So, you know, I think it's in, like, I mean, I think that Evolve Systems and Marty and Don and the team there are a great example of that, of truly evangelizing the role of content internally, right? Letting people know, hey, this is super important that we rethink how we're producing content, how we're rethinking the customer journey. So yeah, I think that's one way of evangelizing the idea internally and getting everybody on the same page. But I also wanted to share another example from another agency who I think does this super well. And if we could show the next slide with AHA Media Group. My friend Ahava Liebtag runs an agency outside of Washington, D.C. called AHA Media. And what they decided to do at the very beginning of this year in January was they ungated all of their content on their website, right? They just took all the roadblocks down. So you didn't have to offer your email address to sign up to download any of their reports. Now, why would they do this? They had a few things in mind. The first thing was they were hoping to increase the number of shares for their content, right? So they were hoping to get their brand shared more freely on social media. So they thought, okay, if we take down the roadblock, people will be more likely to share. The second reason was they wanted to build trust with the people that they sell to. Now, who does AHA Media Group sell to? And that headline gives you a little hint right there. They sell to hospitals and healthcare marketers. Obviously, for the past 18 months, hospitals, healthcare marketers have been under tremendous pressure, right? Things have really changed in all of our worlds, but especially in healthcare marketers, which have really been ground zero for this pandemic that we're still in, right? And so to them, they thought, okay, we want to build trust with these people. The best way to do that is maybe just to ungate all of our content, offer all of our resources to free. They're a content marketing agency. They sell to hospitals. Let's just offer it all for free because these people need us right now. And so that's exactly what they did. It was a little bit of an experiment. They didn't know how this was going to go, but let's show the next slide here. And it's fantastic, right? It turned out to be an incredible success. AHA Media Group downloads increased by 102%, of course, right? Because you don't have to put your email address in, but still, that number is pretty astounding. 102% is pretty intense. But more than that, you know, there was tons of other things that happened as a result. Website traffic was up 48%. The number of email newsletter signups that they got was up 14%. What other stats? Trying to remember. Social media. Their social media audience grew by over 40% as well. So their footprint grew much larger, and also the trust that they built with their audience has never been stronger. AHA Media Group has had a fantastic year, in part because they're making strategic decisions that work for them. Now, I'm not saying that everybody here that you should ungate all of your content. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it worked for them because of their specific audience that they sell to and because they approached it in a very smart and strategic way. But I'm sharing it as an example of evangelizing the importance and the role of content externally as well. So Marnie and her group are a great example internally, but I think AHA Media Group is a great example externally.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think too, you know, as marketers, we start to shift towards so many things that we can measure, right? And
Yeah.
so being able to measure when someone actually puts their email address in or downloads something, it feels very concrete and measurable. But in reality, some of that you're causing friction in the buying process, right? Because as people need information, they may not be ready to commit to giving their email address. And so I think really just understanding what you should make available, as opposed to holding back for later, is so key. By gating everything, it makes it a little bit more difficult for folks to get the information as they need it.
Yeah, and I also think that something like this it runs counter to what most marketers, most B2B marketers do, and that's in part why this was so successful, right? Because they sort of upended the status quo, right? Instead of saying, "Oh, everybody offers a download with an email address," instead of that, they said, "Well, what if we didn't?" So I like the way that they thought out of the box a little bit, and they thought, they were a little bit, counterintuitive with it. Well, what if we didn't do that? What would happen? And I also like something else about it, that AHA Media Group was super upfront about the fact that this was an experiment and they didn't know how it was going to go, and it may be a flop, it may be a disaster. And if so, then they're going to regate everything all over again. Like, they were very upfront about that. And I think that level of transparency and honesty is really authentic. And that also goes a long way to building that trust with your audience.
And Julia made a comment in the chat panel. She said, I absolutely love that. Transparency is so attractive, and to make it accessible to others is all the more powerful. So I definitely would agree with that. And you mentioned something else too a little bit ago, how the Evolve team rebranded for the external, go to market, but also internally as a team.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that, organically, the results and that they were seeing were so much more powerful, as opposed to trying to force everyone internally to message and to create content along their new brand. It was as if it organically was exuding from them.
Yeah, I'm glad you called that out, because and by the way, Marnie did not know that I was going to talk about her to this degree today. Like, we talked this morning because I had a question about something, and I said, yeah, I might end up like, I mean, she didn't know that it was going to be this whole thing, so she's probably like, what? But yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because I do think it's really important. It's really a way to align everybody and to get everybody rowing in the same direction, to use a cliche, but it's 100% true, right? Getting everybody together and saying, here's what we're all about, here's our mission, here's our vision, and here's the kind of content that we want to produce for our audience. Like, this is what gets us up in the morning, and these are the people we sell to. So I think just articulating that and getting everybody involved in a rebranding effort is just, it's so powerful. And you probably don't need to do a large scale rebranding effort, right? It could be much smaller scale. You could decide just to do I don't know, to launch a new product marketing campaign or something like that. I don't think it needs to be something as massive as a rebranding of an entire business. But I think looking for those moments and those opportunities to get everybody on the same page, I think is so smart about how Marnie did it. So it's such a funny comment. Should have worn one today. Yeah,
Bear cover for Marnie. So you had mentioned several times authenticity, and I think we all toss that word around, authenticity in content. Kind of get beyond the fluff, right? For example, you place a ton of value on humor. You've been known to say that people absorb information way better when they're having fun. So, talk to us about, what does authenticity mean, and how does that actually play out when you develop content?
Oh, I feel like this is like the hardest question ever. It's honestly, and part of me feels allergic to that word authenticity, at least in marketing, because it feels like something that you put on. Like, I put on this suit jacket, it feels like, oh, I'm authentic now. I'm like really authentic, but it's not like that, right? It's basically how you walk the walk, and it's how you show up. It's you showing your audience who you are. We started this conversation where you asked me, like, what are the 3 things you need to think about when you're sitting down to write or to create any kind of content for your audience? And it's do I see me? Do I trust you? And do I like you? And I think that's really where authenticity lives. That's where it comes from. I think it's hard to manufacture authenticity because it's literally you can't, right? It has to come from you. It has to come from your brand and the people who are part of your brand. That's kind of where it lives. And yeah, so I guess that's where it comes from. I do think it's very important to think about being accessible as well, and sort of another A word in content marketing. And that's why I like humor so much, because I think humor can signal belonging. It can signal that like we get you. It can bridge that connection of likability and accessibility. So yeah, that's another reason why I like humor a lot. And I like the way that if you can, because humor is so subjective, right? That if you can make your audience laugh, or if you can actually, signal in a way that like we know that you will think this is funny, that's a very powerful moment. It's a very powerful thing to do.
For sure. And yeah, and just goes back to the whole human side of, we're at the end of the day, we're communicating, through content and messaging, to real people. So let's shift a little bit. So with storytelling, we hear so much about storytelling these days as well. Marketers have been charged with articulating their brand story. According to stats, even stories are remembered up to 22 times more than facts alone. Given customers personable, relatable connection to a brand, they're the empathetic bridge in ways. And the bottom line is, people like to work with people they like to talk with, which lays out in how businesses sell their services. So talk a bit about, storytelling and the value.
But yeah, I feel like that stat that you shared, like what people remember stories 22% more than they remember facts. Was that the stat that you shared a second ago? Was that it? Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like we need a story around that. Like
22 times.
Oh, okay, 22 times, right? All right, sorry. Yeah, I feel like we should have a story around that. We should have like, we should stage a one-act play right now to demonstrate that, because, of course it's true. Like you can remember stories to a far greater degree than you can remember facts or stats or anything that is bloodless, so to speak. So yeah, when I think about storytelling as relates to marketing, and honestly, Tara, like we could focus on storytelling for this entire session. This fall, the keynote that I'm giving most frequently is about storytelling in marketing, and how do we actually tell true stories well, and with an artfulness, but also with keeping in mind just like the fact that we're using them to connect with customers and get them involved in what we do or what we sell. So all that to say, I could talk about storytelling for another hour. So buckle up, guys. We're going for another hour. I just decided this is happening. Let's just go. We're going.
I think we've got a good audience, so I think they're game.
No, I'm just kidding. I think that the most important thing is to think about the human at the center of your story. And, we hear this all the time that, make the customer the hero of your story. But what does that actually mean? It means, what you do or what you sell is not your story, right? Your story is not your product. Your story is what your product or your service does for the person who matters to you. And find the person that you help, essentially. Find the person and tell their story. And that will resonate more than 22 times more than anything else that you publish or produce from marketing, right? I think it's important to think about what you do for the customers. And honestly, just like going back to the stats for a second here, like about, what we're doing as marketers and what's been so successful. I mean, I think that's why case studies here are like consistently in the past 12 years, they show up in one of the top 5 or 6 assets. And why is that? It's because they tell the story of how our product lives in the world. There's an art to doing it well, but I think start with the human and or humans who you're helping, and find that person and tell that story.
That is great. Thank you. So, just shifting a bit, looking at the time here, we do want to hold true to the promise that we put out there in questions from the audience. So I do see one here today, and if there are others coming in, we will try to get to them as we can.
Can I share something just super quick while you're looking at questions here? So yeah, one thing I wanted to just call out, because as I was thinking about, we're talking a lot about, you know, making your content enjoyable and thinking about being truly customer centric. And hopefully we can pull up some graphics here, but I wanted to share just, you know, maybe one final example. And to tell the story of another agency. This is an agency called Carney and Company, and they are based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And what I love about what Carney and Company does is that they publish a daily newsletter about marketing information. Oh, there we go, called the Daily Carnage. And it's a newsletter that shows up every single morning in my inbox. It gives me all kinds of ideas and tactics and strategies around marketing. But what I especially love is that, yes, the newsletter is fantastic, but then they also have a Facebook group called the Daily Carnage Facebook group. And I think that this is really significant because remember, the name of the agency is Carney and Company, but the name of the Facebook group is the Daily Carnage. It's literally named after the newsletter. And to me, like, this is just, it was such a brilliant way, I think, of reframing your content as community. So the Daily Carnage is a Facebook group in which people can, you know, ask questions. If you've got a question about marketing, all kinds of things, like all kinds of conversations going on there. And look at that, it has 17,000 members. But what I really love is that this feeds the newsletter, right? So every Friday they do a Facebook Friday, and they call out questions that have gotten tons of traction in the Facebook group itself. And they also, by the way, use it to amplify the newsletter, right? What's going on in the newsletter. So it becomes like this content ecosystem just all on its own, taking one thing and using it to build community off of one content asset and using it to fuel another content asset, which then fuels the original content asset. You know, it's just beautiful. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to share that example because I think it's a great example of a small company, by the way, another small company doing really fantastic work. And ultimately, really, it allows them to punch above their weight class, so to speak, right? It allows them to show up in a more significant, impactful way, even though this agency is small B2B agency based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
We have a slight little technical glitch here. So with the audio, so hopefully you can hear this. And so
yeah, I can hear you.
Relative to that thought. Okay, perfect. So Andrew had asked, and this plays right into that, any thoughts on how to produce quality, consistent content at scale with very, very, very limited resources?
I feel like I just answered that question with my Carney example. Yeah, I mean, Andrew, I love that question, and it's good to see you again as well. Yeah, I love that question because I think that's the challenge that we all have as B2B marketers, right? I mean, I have literally never met a marketer who has worked at even a massive enterprise organization, right? Who has said, I have all the resources I need. I have all like the cash money to do whatever I want. Like that doesn't exist. That person does not exist. And so I think we all are struggling with limited resources. And if you're small, maybe you can even throw 3 berries before limited resources. So maybe it is very, very, very limited resources. I think the most important thing to do, like if I were you, I would focus on that email newsletter, like I said, because in my mind, the email newsletter is the one asset that you 100% own. You are not dependent on algorithms to try to break through. You own that list. You can produce it at scale. I would focus on that. And that's what's going to ultimately allow you to build a relationship with one person at one time. So in terms of, kind of where I would start my content, that's what I would focus on. And that's what I would do.
Okay, and this next question is not going to come as any surprise, but Ann, what's the best way for folks to get more content and more information?
Oh my gosh.
When we have a hard stop today.
If the last 45 minutes haven't been like enough with me, you can, I publish my own email newsletter every other week you can subscribe at annhandley.com/newsletter. It's the best thing on the internet. I don't know. I'm just going to claim that. Why not? No, I publish it every other week. It's different than the Marketing Profs newsletter, which comes out 3 times a week and shares lots of tips and tactics and ideas for B2B marketing. My newsletter focuses on content and writing, and on communicating and all the things we're talking about today, communicating in human, authentic, story-driven ways.
That's great, and it's the time flew, so a lot of really great information coming at us fast, and a lot of takeaways I think from here. Just really as you're looking to individually shape your strategies, especially going into 2022. Like what you're going to do next year is probably prominent for many folks. So I think just having this information, being able to digest it, and then think about how it applies for your business going forward it's just been a lot of fun to get that information from you, and always a pleasure. And you can see again from the chat panel, you've got a large group of fans. But as we close out here, to respect everyone, I do want to mention, come back for Seth's. It'll be a lot of fun as well. We look to re-engaging with everyone in a couple of weeks. Any last words, Ann?
No, just because we're at 2:46, I just want to mention Julia. So one of the things that has shifted quite a bit is my thoughts around email. She's asking what has shifted ahead of the revisions of my book coming out. My thoughts around email, my thoughts around email newsletters, and certainly various other kinds of assets, but in particular those two. Definitely rethinking that, and there's also just some other opportunities to talk about different ways of engaging with audiences that have evolved, because again, I wrote that in 2014, so here it is 2021, and definitely marketing has changed. So yeah, so that's what it is. All right, thank you so much, Tara and SharpSpring, and I will see you back here with Seth on my birthday. So.
Excellent. We look forward to it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for spending time with us today on behalf of Ann.